This Thursday marks 13 years since the September 11th terror attacks, and although the nation is still mourning, volunteers who searched for survivors or cleaned up rubble at the World Trade Center site, also known as Ground Zero, recently got some good news. Even if they were not officially affiliated with an organization, they may be eligible for funds from the Workers' Compensation Board. That's because of a judge who ruled in favor of Jaime Hazan, an emergency medical technician. He spent 2 days helping out on the pile at Ground Zero. Jaime is here with me in the studio now. Welcome. And across the table is his attorney, Michael Hutter of Albany Law School. Professor, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Jaime. Your story is you just basically were struck, like all of us, by the tragedy, and you wanted to do something to help.
There was no choice. When I saw on television the building get hit, initially I said, we're under attack. I could see it, and there's only so many trained people in New York City. I'm one of them who is fortunate to have been an EMT 6 years, been an instructor in CPR and first aid. How could I not go? So I went.
Well, did you actually have an opportunity to use your skills? Because my understanding is the volunteers, I mean, you were obviously subject to the dust and to the rubble, but there weren't, unfortunately, a lot of survivors to assist, which we didn't know at the time of the impact.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, because initially we had set up a triage center, and we were expecting thousands of people to come up, and we didn't realize how many were basically exterminated that day.
Right.
So that was a big surprise, because we were ready for tons, and it ended up not getting used, and resources went into that direction. But at the same token, when I went down to Ground Zero on 9/12, it was a war zone. It was a really nasty. I mean, it's hard to find words for it. I think every 9/11, it stirs up a lot of feelings inside of responders, and I'm no different. And it's just one of those things that really gets to you. Just the smells, the visions that you have going through your mind that don't want to go away. So.
But you were only there for 2 days, right? Correct?
That's correct. And I think that I was there for 1 day at Ground Zero, 1 day at Chelsea Piers, and I think that's why I'm so surprised I'm sick, because it was just a day. How could somebody get so sick who got exposed to this toxic spill for a day? And that had been my question for a while to my doctors, and they said, no, it's very, very possible. And even at 1 day, on the second day, based on the toxicity in the air, that was enough to do it.
And you were there when the concentration was the highest, obviously. I mean, it was right in the immediate aftermath. So there was money that was appropriated. The federal government provided it. The state legislature created a fund, but you were not able to access that fund because of rules that were promulgated by the Workers' Compensation Board. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. There's something called Article 8A, which I'm sure Professor will be much better equipped to answer than I will.
Yes.
But the federal government had placed aside a set of money, based on my understanding, that was designed for the volunteers, and we were able to reach out to Workers' Comp Board. Again, providing you could prove you were there, you were working, you had a legitimate case. Those funds were set aside for people like myself who volunteered. And I thought it was going to be a pretty simple case. I had a photograph of myself ultimately that I found. I had witness testimony. I have a lot of doctor records, probably this high worth of them, and it was a no-brainer as to what was going on.
So, Professor, how did you get involved in this case?
I got involved in this, Liz, through the New York State Bar Association ProBono Program. I was set up working in cases that appeals that would be taken to the 3rd Department here in Albany by people who did not have the money to afford an attorney, or attorneys maybe were not interested in it, but yet had some very good merit. And through the pro bono program, they screen these cases. It's headed up by a local attorney, Cynthia Feathers, a very prominent appellate attorney. So she reviews the cases. They submit, as Jaime submitted, would you take a look at this? And I put my name on that panel of a handful of us handle these type of cases. And when the case came around, I saw that in 9/11, a volunteer being denied, something's wrong. Immediately, the red flags came up.
But the board, I mean, I guess I'm not sure even if you can answer this question. Do we know what the board's thinking was when they decided to write these sort of arbitrary rules that people who weren't officially affiliated, like if he was with sort of, the ambulance corps of whatever, he would have been approved, correct?
If he was affiliated with a charitable organization, maybe even the Boy Scouts or whatever, it would be okay. But even though he was a credentialed EMT on the scene with proof of it, demonstrated illness, the board had adopted a rule saying that you had to be affiliated. Now, at that time, this is before the New York State Legislature stepped in. Perhaps it was justified by then. They had to have some screening. They did not have an infinite amount of money available.
Right, right.
But once the New York State Legislature came in and said, these are the people who are eligible, the board's continuation of that policy made no sense. It is, as you indicated, it was just completely arbitrary, no support whatsoever for it.
Well, it also, I mean, and let's say we'll just be fair and we'll try to be magnanimous, we'll just say that they weren't trying to hurt anybody necessarily, but they were trying to put some parameters in a situation that no one knew how to handle.
Oh yeah, no, they weren't not just being outright nasty or spiteful. And again, with the rule, I believe, when it was first promulgated, had some basis, but its continuation after the legislature stepped in, it really now became silly and unjustifiable.
And Jaime, your hope is that this actually, obviously it applies to you and you'll now be compensated, right? And are you not able to work because of your illness?
Yes, that's correct. But it doesn't just affect me, it affects so many people. And I think that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for that Professor Hutter did, is that he really, he laid the foundation so other volunteers who are in my situation could now apply to get that money, and they're not going to be held back because of an order of the chair that had no basis under the law. And that's really where this steps in. And really what my wish was, if I could have an early Christmas wish right now, would be that the New York State Workers' Comp Board would proactively reach out to the people that were denied benefits, as opposed to having them have to figure it out on their own.
Because they're not doing so? I mean, they say that they are, but they're not being as active as you think they should be?
It's my suspicion that more can be done to locate these individuals, because they're the ones that know. They're the ones that have the paper and the case in their system, or not in their system, in a pile, wherever it may be.
Right.
And I mean, imagine you were one of those people who were at your last turn to get help, and you were denied and said, sorry, take a hike. And now all it would take was someone from the board to say, hello, Liz, guess what? You're not going to believe this, but your case is going to be opened up again because the law that ruined your case had no basis under the law, and now it's legal.
We're actually out of time, but Professor, before we go, do you have any idea about how many people actually might be impacted by this decision?
We know of at least, we know there are dozens of people who've been denied prior to this case. Their cases will now be reopened. We believe literally there are hundreds, if not maybe thousands of people who never applied because they thought it was just a lost cause.
And the statute of limitations hasn't expired on those people. No,
and that's the fact. That's one of the things. The Cuomo administration is getting the word out now. Listen, the period of statute of limitations is going to expire soon. Get it in, even if you're not ill, because you don't know what's going to happen, as with Jaime's situation.
Well, I thank you very much. It's an important story, Jaime, and I guess congratulations in order. Thank you,
very
Professor.
much.
I appreciate
Thank you very much.
your time, both.